Welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts. I'm Dr. Michelle Robin here with my co-host Bayleigh Soza. As you know, we're doing a series about peace. It's hard for us to say the word violence, but the truth is it's really how do we violate ourselves? How do we violate other people? And how do we bring more peace to any conversation or any situation that we're in? It's really funny. I'm thinking about how I do this in my daily life. When you encounters me, people as I do on a day-to-day basis, they're bringing in their energy, not knowing whether they're coming from a bad situation at work or a fight with a friend, a colleague, or possibly they're going through divorce. You just don't know what people are going through. So, number one, be gentle with everybody. And most of all, be gentle with yourself. So, I wanted to invite my friend Brooke Seiz, who's a somatic therapist. She's got a bunch of credentials. She's a learner, she's a musician. Most of all, she's a really great person. I want to invite her to help me close out this series about the ways we can be more peaceful in our body and the way we present in the world. So, Brooke, welcome to Small Changes, Big Shifts.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, and tell us listening a little about your story and why you shifted from a musician to a nutritionist to a therapist.
Well, like a lot of us, I had my own personal health journey. And so that, led me through all of my gut issues and all the different pieces. I won't go into it all, but into through my theater days. And that's kind of like a high cortisol job. And at some point decided found a nutritionist for myself, found a therapist, like it did really great things for me. And so I knew I wanted to have kids. And when I wanted to shift gears, I went back to school for nutrition. And then I think the big thing that led me to therapy was that I was doing a lot of gut work and watching like these protocols that would work really great, but then people would be back 6 months later or a year later. And I kept noticing this nervous system stress trauma connection, and then decided to go to counseling and do somatic therapy. So I love all those pieces together.
This is one reason why I love the Abundance of Wellbeing so much. You can pray a lot and not be healthy. You can exercise a lot and not be healthy. You can be vegan and not be healthy. So Matt do them all together. And so we shared in one of our shows recently that if you don't heal the heart, you'll never heal the body. And so your story always fascinates me, from using your voice as a musician, which we're going to talk about that in the show, to going into nutrition, to go into not just therapy, but you do somatic therapy. What's the difference between regular therapy and somatic therapy?
hmm Probably there's a lot of different ways to describe it. Sometimes I actually struggle to do this because there's some different angles to take. But one way to put it is that in talk therapy, we're looking at behavior, we're looking at emotions, we're looking at behavior, emotions, thoughts, right? In somatic therapy, we do that, but we add on organism, like what's happening in the body. And so for me as a practitioner, it feels like tracking personality. Here's what personality is saying. Here's what organism or body is saying, and how we can create more connection or awareness between the two.
When we think about the quadrants of well-being, we think about the whole person approach. And my first exposure to it was that because I was so much in the mechanical quadrant of how we're taking care of our physical body. But you said something interesting about how when you're doing the work, you also see how is it affecting the body and taking it in a deeper level like that. How does that approach allow people to maybe uncover different things that they didn't know about themselves or different areas of their lives that they need to address?
Awareness would be like the simple one word answer, right? Awareness that might have been subconscious or unconscious. It's like if somebody says something that's really like an awful experience they had, or something that's really not funny or not kind to themselves, and they laugh, we might say, can we pause and notice kind of what's going on in your body? We might even say, can we say that? Would you be willing to say that again, and kind of inhibit the laughter and just see what you notice? And usually it creates more authentic awareness of how somebody's actually feeling about what they're talking about.
That's a great example because oftentimes we don't realize that we become disconnected. And so, how are we so disconnected with our bodies these days? And how are you seeing that show up in your work?
That comes oftentimes really early in our family of origin, in maybe experiences that we've had growing up. And in those experiences, we aren't able to respond authentically. And we inhibit what we needed to say, or we shut down our stress response. We freeze and we don't complete that stress response in the body, and then it's held.
What are the signs that you are disconnected? What are symptoms that people might be experiencing that maybe go, oh, after this, I realize I'm disconnected?
Anything from chronic pain, physical, even just physical tension in the body, pains, anger could be emotional, anger, anxiety. It may also just be things like stomach issues, stomach aches. We see that a lot with kids, right? Is that stomach aches are more commonly an emotional response as opposed to a physical response.
You're a mom of 3 kids.
Mhm.
And so we're talking to some parents today. They're at home. They've got a few more weeks of summer. What would you tell them to be listening and how to tune into their kids and what they're saying that they're not saying?
I think for one, we start with listening to ourselves and how what's going on for us. If I am home with, weekends can be long weekends with the kids. And if everybody's talking to me at once and they're all needing things and I feel some stress build up in my body, that's a sign to me that I need to set some boundaries and stop and just listen to them and figure it out and slow down. So I think it starts with ourselves and then slowing down and listening to what's going on, maybe noticing what their body's doing. Do they need to be a little more active? What's going on emotionally? I also love pulling in a little bit of like parts work stuff. I was just, as we're talking about kids, thinking about my daughter who loves being busy all the time. We were talking about that earlier. And saying, like, she can get really going. And this part of you that needs to move, move, move is here. And, asking for Indy to show up when we need to slow down and sit at the table, and then getting that part busy outside later, so just kind of helping them be aware of what they need and not shaming or trying to shut down the response that's happening, but just kind of work with it.
Yeah, it's a lot about just holding the space and also giving them maybe some verbiage to try to describe the situation. I love the parts piece of like, oh, this excited version of you right now, because they don't really truly understand oftentimes. And I say they talking about kids, but I also think sometimes adults and
Yeah.
us as well, right? We don't always understand. And so you said earlier we will respond to circumstances just to get through the moment, but sometimes it sticks with us. We maybe aren't using our voice or speaking our truth in that moment. How does not using our voice really start to impact the nervous system?
So, for one, we hold those emotions inside. We hold whatever if we're saying not using our voice because we're saying yes to everything, or we're not saying what we want to say, we're not listening to perhaps our fatigue. If we're saying yes to everything, we're not listening to our anger. If what we want to say is something and we hold it in, of course, there's, not reacting to every emotion we have, but authentically noticing it, figuring out what to do with it so that we're not just holding it in. And then that turns into, as we were talking about earlier, tension, all kinds of different symptoms that we might notice in the body or emotionally.
I was thinking about this series and thinking about the ways I violate myself. And so one reason why I wanted to bring you on, because I wanted to take the personal responsibility and go back to what I can control. One of my favorite sayings lately is control what I can. And I create my own craziness. Sometimes I'll like have this long to-do list. I'm like, you know what? No one's going to know if you'll get that done because it's not on anybody's list but your own.
Right.
So stop the madness, just so you know. I have that conversation with myself on a daily basis. Yeah. And so I'm thinking about the self-talk, this need to be valuable, to be busy, to be achieving. And so how can somebody develop some self-compassion around that?
hmm For one, I think acknowledging, just like you said, acknowledging that's there. Like there's this part of you that is going to do that. And it's super functional sometimes. And it's helped you in so many ways. And it can get in your way. And first, just it's the parts work thing, I think works great for that to just say, yeah, that's a part of me. It's here. And what do I want to do with it? Is that going to drive the truck today or is it going to be something different?
I want you to dive in a little bit deeper because here's my big aha right now is that I do have multiple personalities and not in an unhealthy way. Yep. So that's my takeaway today. I had these different parts. I've got the overachiever part. I got the part who let's just go take a hot bath. I got the part who it's never enough. Even though I've worked at it, I've been to therapy. I've done my somatic work. No, I've done my acupuncture, my chiropractic, my affirmations. So talk to me more about this parts person, my multiple personalities. I really want to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's the idea. So it comes out of IFS, internal family systems. And in IFS, they talk about the self with a capital S, which is in somatic work, we would say that's a ventral vagal. It's where we're present, we have perspective, we're clear headed, we're calm, we're collected, we're able to be curious. That's like the biggest word I use in my practice with clients is curiosity. And when we're in ourself, then we can kind of do, make decisions from that kind of like authentic place. And then we have all these parts that we develop growing up. And, you can go down into the exile parts and the firefighter and the protectors, but all of them are parts that we develop out of survival to be accepted in our family of origin or with the people around us to get through hard things. And they can be really functional, like the achiever part, and also can really wear us out. And so noticing that part, and like you said, in somatic work, we might notice it and spend some time with it. And when we're there, like, where does that show up in the body? What is that telling us? A lot of curiosity around it. Cognitively, we can talk to it, and it creates a lot of self-compassion because, that like I'm not good enough part can, if it's talking, we just are talking poorly to ourselves. If we just say, oh, the I'm not good enough part is here. And that's a thing that sometimes shows up for me. And we can reparent it a bit, or we can talk to it. And that changes the conversation in our head where we're coming from ourself with it rather than being led by it.
We kick off this series talking about this concept of the courage to be whole. And really, what does that mean to dive into yourself? Because, in order to stop a lot of these cycles that we see, it starts with you. You shared that tip earlier when it comes to parenting. It starts with you recognizing yourself, and how do you start there? And so I think that this is a great way to think about how are we talking to ourselves as well, because that's also how you show up in your community and how you're speaking to others or how you're perceiving others. Or I know one for me that I always catch myself is I think other people are thinking the same things I'm thinking about myself, right? So if it's in a negative way, you're multiplying those voices. And so, what are some subtle shifts for people? Because it's easier said than done to go to positive self talk. But if somebody's listening and they're like, want to be more connected with their body or want to be more present in the moment, what are some subtle shifts that they can start to work into their routines?
Some of that is, the wellness self care things we talk about all the time, like drinking water, making sure that we're one thing that I've started to do, and this is like a little thing, but it was actually really hard for me to do, is there's this idea that if we stop and slow down, we're going to fall behind or something. And it can be so in the body, even if in my head I knew that. It's like I see this all the time with clients as they start to settle and then they're like, their body braces. It's like, I can't because the other shoe might drop or something might happen. It's kind of out of this society we live in. It just happens for a lot of people. And 5 minute pauses, just when I'm in my office and it's like, oh, I have an hour break. I'm going to eat. I'm going to do some stuff. And even if I don't have time to really like do a meditation or something, just like closing my eyes for 5 minutes and inviting my body to know it's okay to stop and take a break. So all kind of, that's one example, but lots of things like that where we're just taking care of ourselves and then noticing, just starting to notice or have awareness around the things that we say to ourselves often is a starting point.
You make me think about, as I was out touring, talking about the E Factor, Engage, Energize, and Bridge, 3 steps to vibrant health, I talked about the word notice. What are ways people can notice what's going on in their body? Because it sounds easier than it really is.
hmm In somatic experiencing, we use this acronym called SCBM. It stands for sensation, image, behavior, affect, and meaning. So sensation is like, what do I feel in my body? Is my chest tight? Sometimes it's like, oh, I feel like I'm melting or I feel bubbly. I have a whole like chart of words I give people. It's kind of fun. You know what's going on. Starting to have some awareness of like, what is that sensation in the body? Image is a picture in the mind. Sometimes we think of something like, what are the pictures in my mind in a moment? Behavior, what am I doing? Affect is all the emotions. And then meaning are our thoughts or the stories or the narrative that we're telling ourselves or thinking about. So just stopping to like, I think SCBM is one way. Just stop and notice all those things.
Do you have a document or a handout we put in the show notes on that? Okay, that'd be the show notes. You might want to check that out because I know sometimes I find myself stuck in my body or in my head really more than anything and not in my heart.
Yeah.
And I actually will consciously say, breathe. I say, I got lots of self-talk going on. The good news is it's gotten much more positive through all my work, but there's still some of those days. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you really mentioned that stuck with me is the parts piece. I think it's been a big component of our conversation today. How do people acknowledge those parts in a way of grace? And this is a part of me. It was a part of my story and has led into who I am today, and acknowledge it in a for me instead of a to me mindset.
Yeah. Really knowing that all those parts come out of some sort of survival need. And so if they're noticed and they seem negative, one of the things that IFS says is there's no bad parts. There's a book called No Bad Parts. There are no bad ones. They might seem bad, but they're not. And so just starting from thank you for helping me when I needed you. You're not serving me right now, so we're gonna figure this out. But, thank you for being there.
As we wrap up this series around finding peace in your body and the ways we violate ourselves, I'm going to challenge our listeners to really take a moment and kind of dialogue with your thoughts and see what you're really thinking instead of kind of running through life so fast that you're not really paying attention to yourself. I invite you to do that. But the reason I'm inviting you to do that is because so many people, I believe it's like 20 million people have thyroid disease. Okay, so 12% of the population is going to have thyroid disease sometime in their life. And I'm going to dive into that going in the next couple weeks. I'm curious, how does the somatic or emotional part play into thyroid disease? Is that one reason why it's so rampant?
It's interesting because it makes me want to go down a rabbit hole and keep, thinking about that. But one thing is that when we talk about our voice, or there are so many times in sessions with folks that like you can visually see the squeezing happen because somebody's trying to hold back tears or anger or not wanting to say something. And so this whole area here can hold a lot of stuff. And so that certainly affects what's all inside of there, right? And we've got our thyroid there. And then I'm sure there's a lot of other interesting things that we could go down with that. But that's the thing that jumps up to me right at the start.
Maybe losing your voice.
Losing your voice.
Yeah, speak your truth, which happens at a young age for many people because of sexual violence or that's physical violence or seeing something that somebody says, don't ever tell anybody. So, Brooke, first of all, I love you. I truly do. I'm glad you've been part of our circle, small changes, big shifts for, gosh, 10 years? Yeah, for a minute. I still want to cry. For a minute. It's been fun to watch you grow. It's fun to have you as a resource by clients that refer to you, absolutely love you. And they love your mom too. So we have a shout out to your mom. Thanks for being a great resource because as always, I think part of my assignment of this lifetime is to connect people to people that can be part of your circle, which we were talking about community earlier today with Danny, as well as Carla, is no one goes alone. I've not gone alone. So people will say, oh, you're doing so great. Well, you know what? There's people behind me that actually do most of the work. I just need to be the front person for it. So Baylor, want to give you a shout out. And speaking of community, our semi-annual's coming up.
Yeah, no, great kind of find community. And truthfully, that's how I met Brooke, actually, was through the Wellness Consortium. And so if you are local to Kansas City, you can join us on Wednesday, August 26th for our panel talking about purpose and how do you build a business that reflects your calling. And so whether you're a business owner or just a community member that wants to experience community and come around like-minded individuals, get a chance, Dr. Robin and I will be there. Come say hi, especially if you have followed along this series or you've been following along the show and you have been looking for a spot to plug in. It's a great opportunity for you to join us.
And as you know, we are a not-for-profit called Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you're new to the show, we invite you to learn about what we're doing, whether it's our scholarship program, it's building community, or supporting some of our corporate partners. We are grateful for your support. We can't do without you. Thanks for sharing this show. Stay tuned for next week when we start diving into the thyroid. We'll dive into the whole person health approach, and then we'll dive in the following week with Dr. Alicia Johnson for you to understand the science behind the thyroid, because you know what? I'm not that nerd, and I think you're that nerd.
No, not that nerd.
No, hey, we've got connection, and we got connection for you. So join us at the 26th if you're in town. If you're not in town, find community because you need it. You may not think you need it, but you need it. All right, Brooke, love you. Bayleigh, love you. To all of you, have a great week. We're sending big heart hugs, and we'll chat real soon.